What's up, YouTube chuckers? Producer Mike here, not Andy Roddick. He is currently getting ready to play his exhibition match in Atlanta between the Bryan Bros and his partner, Jon Isner. We had a fun conversation with Jon Isner over the weekend, kind of ahead of the event, which is a full episode that is out now on audio podcast. Click a link somewhere here on the screen that Techie Sean's going to put up. We'll be coming out with a full episode later in the week that'll break down the seedings for the Olympics. We'll get Andy and John Wertheim's reactions to Nadal's experience on the clay courts and his tune-up, and really overall the Olympic experience. That'll come out later this week. That'll be more of our full show since Andy was unable to tape today. We didn't want to cut you guys short and not give you any content, so here's a excerpt of Andy and Jon Isner talking about Isner's incredible 11-hour match, the by far and away record for a singles match lasting over 3 days, and Isner's take, from the on-court perspective was much different than I would have expected as somebody who, remembers watching it and what his kind of feelings are of it now, some years later. Anyways, remember, full episode here. Click. Boom. Another episode will come out later this week, breaking down the Olympics. And for right now, enjoy this excerpt with Jon Isner. Thanks.
We would be remiss. We are going to talk about the match that you're probably exhausted talking about at this point, which is your Wimbledon match that lasted the entire month of July or June. That 1 year.
That was still in June, yeah.
Yeah, it was okay. Yeah, so it was still in June. I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna give you my experience with your match, if that's okay, and we'll leave out certain parts of it. But I think, like, your perspective at this point, my read is that sometimes you're really tired of talking about it. So get in, get out whenever you want to. It is important. I think it's amazing. Maybe you've had enough space from it now where you don't, get asked about it every 10 seconds, and maybe now it's every 2 days. But I remember, think about how ludicrous this decision that I made that night was. So I remember I had played earlier that day. We were playing on the same days that year. And I had played, finished. I remember I was leaving. I think I probably left, I don't know. You might have been in the first set 2, set 3. I don't know. And at Wimbledon, everything's close. You stay in the village. So unlike a lot of places, you leave the courts in your living room, 4 minutes later. And so I'm there, I'm watching, and we stay, and we're not going to dinner yet. And normally on my off days, or not off days, if I had an off day the next day, I like to get out of the village. I would go into the city, have a long dinner, and worry about, and then days before I played, I would stay home and eat in the house. And I remember us having the conversation. You were about, I don't know, probably 2 hours into the match. I'll get it wrong. That's not, maybe 2.5 hours into the match. And you were going into the fifth set. And I remember having the conversation with Larry and Doug, and it was like, hey, should we stay here tonight and eat food in the house and watch the fifth set? Or should we go into town and, we'll check the scores and, whatever. And so as a bad friend, I did not watch the fifth set, which thankfully I didn't, because I would have still been watching it 3 days later and I would have been hungry.
Exactly. But what I do think you got wrong, though, Andy, and actually I know you got wrong, is it was a 3-day match. We know that the first day we stopped after I won the fourth set. So you had already won. You had already won your first round of match.
So maybe it was the remainder of the fifth set the next day.
It was the remainder of, it was like I was second on or something, and I must have been 10 all, and it was 4 in-the-afternoon, and I'm just making that up, right? So anyways, we started the second day. It's a fresh slate. Not a single person was talking about this first round match because it was 0-0 in the fifth set on the start of the second.
And frankly, it's a super boring matchup in regular circumstances.
Super boring. It was kind of a big moment for me because at that point, I would establish myself as a seeded player at a slam, so you want to kind of at the very least make your seed, kind of, prove your worth in that regard. I was seeded 20 something. But yeah, totally boring match. Probably wasn't even worthy of court 18, which is a somewhat big court at Wimbledon. But yeah, it was the second day that, I'm going to say we went on at 2:00. I don't know exactly. And we had, it gets dark at almost 10. We had 7.5, 8 hours to finish one match. And the first 4 sets were like hour and a half because it was like one break each through 4 sets or something, a couple of tiebreakers.
Because tiebreakers existed is why it went quickly.
Tiebreakers existed. So the first 4 sets went by quickly. We ran out of light. And then the second day was of course the nutty day. And that was the day that some people have spoken about. You must have decided, I don't know what the heck you decided to do during the, but when I got back to the locker room, you were the only one there, and you had a big pile of takeout food for me. It was like pizza and pasta and mashed potatoes and like grilled ardent. It was everything you could imagine, some Italian joint you got it from. And I really, really appreciated that. And I just devoured it all because I was just like, I didn't know where I was at that stage.
I remember, okay, so you're right. So I had the timelines mixed up, but it was the second day. You must have been, I don't know, you must have been like 3-all in the 5th, whatever it is. 10-all in the 5th, and I'm like, oh, do we stay? No, okay, you're playing your own tournament. This isn't for entertainment purposes. Go in. So I remember going in, coming back, and it's some stupid number. Who knows? I mean, there aren't that many records in sports that you're like, there is a 0% chance that ever gets broken. Like there's nothing in sports where you can say like someone could hit 75 home runs, right? Someone could throw for 6,000 yards. I don't know. Like it could happen. This will never, ever. Now the rules make it so that it will never be matched. But there's nothing that's ever been. It
didn't matter. Even
it's a unicorn. It's such a clown show of a match. It's insane. Yeah. But I remember, like from my perspective, like this match, and like you said, day one, it's an court 18 match, and Jon and they're holding serve, and it's like watching paint dry. And then day 2. This thing starts ramping, and to the point where I remember we made the choice to go into town, and we were putting it on, and they were running it live on BBC Radio, like and then all the it took on a life of its own, and then to where I remember walking in, and so we came home from dinner. We must have gone to an early dinner. You can play until, you can play pretty late. The light stays up. So
9:30.
Yeah. So on the way back, we called our friend Steven, and we're like, hey, I'm thinking of like a player's mentality and of like a coach's mentality. I'm like, there's nothing open. Like Wimbledon dining is, they get a lot right. And that it seems and so it's
the chicken's a little bit dry.
It's a touch, like there maybe just some olive oil. Like Yeah, exactly. And so, and then we get back, and I started thinking, I'm like, shit, like he's not gonna have. There's no food. We were there because it was literally a 10-second walk from and I have to play the next day. I remember walking into, after you had spent all day on court, I don't know what it was, 7 hours that day, something stupid.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah, 8 hours, whatever it was. I remember walking in, and you weren't able to respond to words. Like, I'm not saying that in like a funny, sarcastic way, like I do. Like, Isner, you were staring straight ahead at the wall, and I was like, "Hey, we brought you some food." You're like, "Okay," and it was as if you had the mental reserve to say, "Okay." It was. I felt bad for mentioning anything.
I feel bad because I didn't even say thank you. Apparently, so
I could have cared less about that. Yeah. That doesn't bother me, but. It's just a player mentality. I'm like, there's no food. Like, I would go into instant panic mode. I remember like at Indy.
There's no Uber Eats in 2010.
No, so. Indy, I would play, and like I would stress out about being the second match at Indy because no place was open, and you'd end up at like Taco Bell after matches, and then you vomit in the semis. That true story. That happened one time. But okay, so then fast forward to the next day. So they play all day, and this match takes on a life of its own. And I think they probably scheduled you second on the third day.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't first.
If it's a continuation of a match, they normally play a full match and then they schedule the continuation second on. I remember watching, I was in the locker room on a practice day, and I remember the view on TV of people lining up. And remember, a day earlier.
Actually, at this stage, you were probably already in the third round.
Yes.
And I'm sitting here, I'm still
correct.
Okay.
I was already I had entered my off day. And so I'm in the locker room, just probably have a hit or something. And I remember on the live feed of BBC, they had this like aerial view, and it was 24 hours. No one could have given a shit about this match. Like no one could have cared. And then the next day you pan in and people are lined up in the queue, not to run to like, center or court one, beeline. Cause there's only, how many seats are at court 18?
Yeah. That's not many.
Like 3,000, 4,000,
no,
5,000?
it's not. No shot. It's
Really?
not 3,000. It's 1,200 tops, like on the
1,200?
sides and that one little grandstand. My guess.
Yeah. So, anyways, there's not a lot of space for grounds passes, and every person who had a grounds pass wanted to see, like, be a part of like this circus, this match, and people literally sprinting to this court to see how this match finishes. We'll skip the first day. Second day it goes on. Your reality, I'm not going to ask you boring questions. Your reality, how aware were you of the phenomenon in real time, or did you only digest that afterwards?
No, I was aware of it. It's a good question. It's somewhere in the 20s. I could start to hear the grounds, the murmur on the grounds.
What does that mean?
Sort of like, I don't know. You could just hear this. I don't know. It's like you sit down on the change of ends at 22, 21 or whatever it is, and you could just hear the grounds talking about it. You could see people kind of on their tippy toes trying to get a peek of the match. People that don't have seats, people like friends lifting them up so they can get up and look onto the court. You can sort of see that. I felt that going on, at least while at that point in the 20s, I was still lucid physically and mentally at that stage. But then, it gets into the 40s and it became an absolute circus. As you mentioned, the scoreboard broke at some point in the 40s.
Wait, what? The scoreboard broke?
Yeah, the scoreboard.
What do they call the maintenance guy?
No, just Muhammad had to just be like, "Bear with me, guys. I know what I'm doing."
Leani was on it.
Leani, he was the umpire, and the scoreboard broke in the 40s, and I don't think it didn't work the rest of the day. Like, anyways, but somewhere in the 20s, I became aware. Then I became really, really acutely aware of it after the match, because I don't know if you remember, the World Cup was going on at the exact same time, and England, of course, was in the World Cup, and our match was the number one story, even above the World Cup. Even like it was like the number one headline. It was nuts. I didn't think it was going to take on like that much of a life, but it did. And then finally we were able to finish it out. I guess 24 games in the match, the third day.
Oh, it's absurd. It's absurd. Like, how do you?
It sucked, honestly, Andy. It sucked being a part of the match. Like,
tell me why.
Awful. Well, like it was good to win, of course. Like the cruel thing, like not many people know is like. Well, a couple of things. I actually drew him first round the very next year.
I remember that. It was crazy. I remember that.
Like,
no way.
Yeah, and that was back in the day when Wimbledon did their draw on the radio. Remember that? Like old school, like everyone listening to the radio. Anyway, but after that match, because Mahood, he's such a good doubles player, he was playing doubles. He played doubles on court 18 after we finished on that third day. And I remember, as a court 18, you do interviews of all the media people on top of court 18. I'm like doing interviews on the court, and he's down there playing doubles, like. Yeah, the poor guy. That was terrible. I mean, I felt awful for him. Like he was on there battling in doubles, and he was still like his hair hadn't moved either. He's had that. His hair. I've known him since 1996, and that hair hasn't moved since then. No, he's got it going on. But yeah, but there's one tournament that was going to lend itself to something absolutely ridiculous like that. It's Wimbledon and those weather days where it's like 65 degrees and no humidity. Like it was just. The conditions weren't hard to compete in, and obviously we're holding serve so quickly, so the match just went on and on and on and on and on. And then you played the next match. You were a shell. You played, if I remember correctly, you were down like 6-2, 2-0 to Timo de Bakker, and it was like I can't move. I can't actually. My body doesn't. Well, work. That's an incredible memory. Yeah, Timo de Bakker. Not many people have said his name recently, but that was the only match my whole career I had 0 aces. So I went from 113 to 0. Like that. I didn't have a single ace. Yeah. That's a pretty big fall off. I can't remember. I don't think you guys played on court 18 next year when you drew first round. They put you on a bigger court. No, we both requested, like we went in, like you went in together. Yes. Wait, walk me through that. That's a great story. You guys walked in together. Like we have no business requesting what court we should play on in a first round, and we both said just putting us on court 18 would be absolutely cruel. Why? And I think we just didn't want to be like, it was like, it's not fond memories of that court. It's like nightmarish stuff. like walking by that court on court 18. We did not want to be. I think 2011 was the very first year they opened up that new court 3, the one right below player dining. And so we played on that court, like a little bit of a bigger arena. like for the rematch or whatever. Not that it was some great match, but that match was 9 hours shorter than the 2010 edition.
I mean, what are the like? There's so much fluky shit involved with this result. Whether it's the 70-68 of things, two big servers who weren't going to break anyone. Like, there's so many things that go into it, and then drawing each other the next year again. Like, did you think part of it was like, this is like, there's no chances? Like,
you think it's staged a little bit.
If I was a marketer, I'd be like,
not.
I'd be like, if I was a marketer, I'm like, okay, we put Roger on center. We could put Rafa here. Let's put, Serena's over here. You know what would be cool is if we got some juice out of a first round match. We should fucking do Isner and Mahut again. That'd be sick. That's what we should do.
That's what your initial instinct is. But Wimbledon does everything by.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying. Did you like that?
Of course, I know that. I know you know that. But anyways, yeah, that was fluky, and that sucked. Like, I didn't want to play him. You don't want to play me first round. And then, like, going back there a year later, like, there's no way we can escape what we did the year before. Like, and then boom, we played each other first round. It just, the media circus kind of ramped up again.
Did you start laughing when it was the draw, or were you like, this sucks? When you had to play each other again?
No, both. Like, I think initially I was really, really bummed out. Like, this really sucks, because I'd already, like, I'd been there for a few days, and like everyone's talking, asking.
And he's good on grass. He's like brilliant on grass, by the way.
Also, yes, by far his best service. I remember in 2010, he was a qualifier, and like, you look at the qualifying draw, it is. You're like, probably the one qualifier you don't want to play is Mahut, and like, I drew him. So I'm like, I knew I was in for he almost beat you in the Queen's final one year. Like, he knew what he was doing on grass, and so I knew it was going to be essentially a toss-up match for sure.
I love that so much. Real quick before we go, you're like, when you end up playing, on tour as long as you did, you kind of cross generations, right? So, you missed Andre by a year. Like, think about that. Like when we're thinking about this, you missed Andre by a year, and you also played Jannik Sinner. Like, when you look at like kind of the breadth of your career, just give me like a quick thing on like when you match up against Roger, like your strategy is a little different because your game plan is largely similar, or more similar than most can afford to be, in a given matchup. Who was kind of your toughest matchup? Was it even one of the big 3 or 4, or was it someone like surprising that we wouldn't think of top of mind?
Yeah, I think I think it is someone surprising. I mean, of course, when you go up against one of the all-time greats, it's a tough matchup for everyone. Sure. But someone that I'm going to say that I really,
I'm going to write a name. I'm going to write a name down, and I'm going to see if I get the name right. Okay, go.
And this is a guy. All right, Leighton Hewitt.
Ah!
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. Like, I couldn't stand playing him. And I played him a few times. I mean, a bunch of times. And like, he returned so well, and his serve stayed so low. And like, when I played him, this wasn't number one in the world, Leighton Hewitt. Like, he wasn't at his top level, but like, it's a nightmare to play. And he had this unbelievable, like, legendary top spin lob. Like, I actually also like, good. I am not. People think I'm hard to lob. Like, I actually am one of the easiest players to lob.
Because you don't move backwards.
I don't move backwards well. Actually, for my size, I move side to side okay, but like, moving backwards is like very, very different. And so like, people are like, oh, don't lob John. I'm like, I'm glad they thought that. And but anyway, Hewitt could lob me at will, and he did. He would get returns down, and his serve would stay so low, especially if I play him on grass. I played him on Queens, I think, one time. It's just a nightmare. I couldn't stand playing him. Really disliked that matchup for sure.
Yeah, that was one. I was like almost certain you were going to say that name.
Yeah, Hewitt.
Yeah, he was brutal. Talk about like biggest change in the game from when you started in 2007. Like, I know mine is very, very simple. Like, there were guys who played big when I first come out in 2001, and by the end it was non-negotiable except for people like you. You had to move. Like, you had slow people who were 12 in the world when I first came out, and then by the end, if you couldn't move, you didn't have a job unless you were Karlovic.
Yeah, that's the game is progressed so much where movement is absolutely paramount, and these athletes now keep setting the bar higher. I mean, like Novak, all-time great mover, but you look at the number I don't know. Sinner's number one. I don't know what Alcaraz is. They're 2 or 3 after winning Wimbledon. But you look at the 2 of the top 3 players in the world and these young guys, Sinner and Alcaraz, and how they move on the court, how they can get from point A to point B, and how it's literally impossible to hit winners on these guys, especially on certain surfaces. Like trying to hit a winner against Carlos Alcaraz at Indian Wells is a nightmare because he moves so well. And you look at the top 10 right now on tour, every single player is an incredible mover. You have to have that. The athleticism that these top players have in the game right now on the men's and the women's side is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I have this coach thing where I like coaches will, you look at prospects and you see a certain guy play, and forever, especially here, we valued the guy who looked great hitting the ball. And my thing was, if you can't get to it, it doesn't matter. You can't be like a streaky shot maker and be slow. You will not make it. I don't care how well you hit the ball. You cannot make it unless you are there set up. Footwork and speed is non-negotiable in tennis these days. There's someone who could be an average junior because they don't strike the ball well. And then all of a sudden, I've been thinking like random pull. Diego Junqueira was a guy who was a lefty who was 5 foot. He was 5'8" lefty. I played him in Miami one year, and he didn't like
pudgy too.
He didn't like leaving clay. That was your words, not mine. His Twitter handle is @Jon Isner. But I'm going, this guy can't make. But he could move, and he didn't miss. You can make a living if your feet are there and you don't miss. You're not going to beat the top guys, but you can beat top 100. Like there's no doubt.
Oh, absolutely. And if you're dedicated and you're committed enough, you absolutely can. But it's somewhere along the line, Andy, when did young tennis players start sliding on hard courts? Because that's certainly, I missed the boat on that one. I never was able to slide. You were never able to do it. But you look at kids, I just go to the country club in Dallas, and every 14-year-old, not phenomenal tennis players, but they know how to slide on hard courts. And that just comes from, somewhere along the line, that has changed because no one, when you and I grew up, were sliding on hard courts. It's just phenomenal how these guys at the top of the game that people watch and try to emulate, that's become a constant and a norm on the game today.
My knee-jerk response to that, and it's not something I've thought about much, is in order to slide, you have to be able to actually slide, stop, and still create speed from an extended position. So it didn't exist when people were using gut. Like you would actually have the benefit of running through the ball on faster surfaces as opposed to sliding, stopping, and then creating speed. That's not something you could do without string technology. I'm guessing this started happening sometime around when Luxilon comes in and all of a sudden you can manipulate the ball from like weird positions a lot easier. That would be my first pass at it, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, you would know more than me. I don't know anything about gut, never used it, but that seems like a very intelligent statement. I don't know what that is. I know Pete Sampras used it, and he had the Stringalings, which is kind of legendary. So.
Stringalings, God, that's something you don't talk about much. Stringalings to save gut. That business was probably good, and then it was probably really bad. I loved that conversation with Jon Isner.
It was awesome.
I like it when people come on here and they're just honest, even if, no one wants to hear like that match wasn't as romantic as we remember it. And I love the peek behind the curtain. I knew that reality because I've talked to Isner before. I just like that he's also willing to share it. His process versus other people's, what we miss, what we don't. It's not all the same. Same reality for a long time, completely different view of that reality. I think that's what makes tennis so unique. It's not part of a team culture. You create your own culture. There are a lot of ways to success in this game of tennis. And producer Mike,
yes,
we're going to do something a little nuts, and maybe we're getting over our skis, but you know what? Screw it. Let's try it. What do we have coming up in Cincinnati, Ohio?
We have our first ever live in-person event.
Ruh-roh.
Whoa.
Ruh-roh. Live show.
Yeah. In beautiful Cincinnati, my hometown.
In Mason.
Yeah, so there'll be at least 20 Haydens there, so don't worry about that.
And 30 total people, by the way. 20 Haydens, 10 people.
Counting the people that have to be there because they work there. It'll be 6:30 Friday, August 9th at Sonder Brewing. That's out in Mason, Ohio. It's going to be open to the public. We're being welcomed there by our good friends at the Cincinnati Open. John Wertheim's actually going to be there too, which is exciting. And then we'll have some special guests. So come one, come all, come on out. Plenty of room. we're pretty excited about it.
Well, this show doesn't run live, but we shoot it live. Like, what you see is what you get. Let it rip, tater chip. I think we can pull it off in person. It's outdoors, I think. So
Partially,
sweating's gonna be an issue. I will have a towel, most likely. It'll be like I'm playing again. But listen, I'm really, really excited about this. We'll get the flyer up for all the details that Mike just mentioned. Also, Friday before the main draw of Cincinnati starts. Will be really fun. John Wertheim in the house, and we'll get some other special guests as well. We'll run through our show, Cincinnati preview. I don't know if we'll probably include some Q&A in the show. If not, we'll definitely do some afterwards for anyone that's interested in coming. John and I will hang out for a little bit afterwards and do some Q&A. It'll be a fun time for all. I might even, have an Ollie Pop, but then if it gets late enough, I don't know, maybe an adult beverage. Who knows? Not me. It'll be a great time. We're excited. We will hopefully see you in Cincinnati, and if not, we will catch you next week right here on Served, presented by Chase. Thanks.